Well, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, for someone who has nothing to hide, he's going a heck of a long way to cover up in the WE scandal. He's threatened an election, he shut Parliament down for 6 weeks, and the latest, he's paralyzed the Finance Committee with a 25-hour, 171,000-word, 1-month-long filibuster with rambly speeches that this week ventured into a Liberal MP comparing the WE scandal documents that have been blacked out to sacred texts like the Jewish Torah, the Christian Bible, and the Koran. So that presumably means that he wants to black out sections of those texts as well. Which ones would he like to black out?
Honourable Minister, Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Madam Speaker, you know, it's interesting when the member talks about filibusters. I sat in this chamber when the member spoke for 14 hours on the budget, when he talked about the stones of the chamber and all sorts of things that were, some might say, are somewhat interesting. As much as the Conservatives want to focus their efforts and their concentration on we, who are we to say that they can't do what their priorities are? What I can tell you, Madam Speaker, is that this government's priority is to work for the health and well-being of Canadians and our economy. We're going to remain focused on the coronavirus and fighting it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, a big difference, Madam Speaker, is that when the member for Carleton filibustered, it was to expose corruption. They're filibustering to hide their corruption. And this week at the Finance Committee, that display by the member for Guelph, where he likened the Bible, the Torah, the Koran, and other sacred texts to their blacked-out corruption documents is disgusting, and frankly, it's quite stupid. We know that for this Liberal government that corruption is sacred. Does the minister...
Could I ask the member to please refrain from using unparliamentary language? Thank you. Well, there are some...
Does the minister agree that this language was wrong, it was hurtful to Canadians of faith? Will he apologize to this House and to Canadians and ask the member to do the same?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, in my times, I have heard the Conservative members filibuster. And when they talk about filibusters, I think they need to look in the mirror. It's important for us to realize, Madam Speaker, what's taking place is a government that is focused on working collaboratively for those that want to work collaboratively on the #1 priorities of Canadians, and that is, in fact, the coronavirus and minimizing the impact, the negative impact that it is having on our society. We would look to the Conservatives to join with us and start working collaboratively, whether it's in committee or in the House.
To continue to work with the Parliament to achieve on this file.
Honorable député de Louis Saint Laurent.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, Canada is the country in the G7 with the highest unemployment rate. And Canada is the only country in the G7 without an economic recovery plan. Unfortunately, Canada's government doesn't seem to know what to do with the public account. There is no budget, no fiscal update. And the Prime Minister said this week that there was no spending anchor. We already thought that was the case, but now he said so openly. Can the government inform Canadians whether it knows that when we spend without any restrictions, it's future generations that are going to pay the bill? The Honourable Minister.
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. As I'm sure the member is aware, in the last number of months, the government has engaged in many different ways, different levels of government, to work collaboratively with a restart program, amongst many other programs, to ensure that Canadians as a whole is in a much better position to be able to combat the coronavirus and the impact. We're looking to the opposition, the official opposition and others, to work collaboratively with the government so that we can continue to be there for Canadians in a very real and tangible way.
L'honorable député de Louis Saint Laurent.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. I think the long silence we heard before the answer speaks quite loudly about the fact that the government doesn't know the answer to the question. And yet, in Quebec, we got a fiscal update from the province. The government is going to run a deficit, but there is a clear goal. And that there is a goal to return to fiscal balance by 2026. What does the Liberal government have to say?
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to answer the question. I would say to the honourable member that if his house was on fire, I would tell him to save the people inside and put the fire out. The Conservative approach seems instead to be to shut off the hose over the concern of the future price of water. We entered this pandemic with the healthiest fiscal situation in the G7. We've used the fiscal firepower we have to help families keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. We've used that fiscal firepower to help keep the doors open of businesses and workers on the payroll. Canadians deserve to have a government that will commit to getting them through this pandemic no matter what it takes, and that is exactly what we're going to deliver.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Madam Speaker, this week the money laundering inquiry in BC said the RCMP doesn't have enough resources and officers to fight it. Dirty money bought up billions of dollars worth of BC real estate in 2018, inflating home prices by 5%. The C.D. Howe Institute says that dirty money laundered into Canada could be over $100 billion a year. The Public Safety Minister was the Minister for Organized Crime Reduction. He has known about this problem for years. So when will he finally take money laundering and fighting organized crime seriously?
Minister of Public Safety.
I want to thank the member for a great question. It gives me an opportunity to remind the member that during the last 4 years of the Conservative government, they slashed the RCMP budget by over $500 million and closed all the integrated proceeds of crime units. Madam Speaker, by contrast, and it's a sharp contrast, we've invested over $172 million restoring the ability of the RCMP, FinTrack, and CRA to establish enforcement teams. We've worked with the province of British Columbia on this matter. We've created new offences, and we are actually investing in dealing with the very serious problem of money laundering and restoring the very unfortunate cuts made by a previous Conservative government.
For Lakeland.
But this minister has been in power for half a decade, so he should stop blaming everyone else, stop pointing fingers, and actually do his job, because you'd think he would get the big picture here as a former police chief. It goes beyond legal casinos in BC. China-based transnational cartels connected to the Chinese Communist Party have been operating underground casinos in BC and Ontario. It looks like foreign interference in Canada, money laundering to fund organized crime that is tearing Canadian families and communities apart. This is a real threat to Canada. So when will this minister actually do something, stop talking?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
The member points out that this is a problem right across Canada, and in fact, Canada used to have 12 integrated proceeds of crimes units, which were staffed by excellent and qualified RCMP officers that conducted those investigations, until the Conservatives closed all 12. We've actually begun to restore those cuts and to replace those officers with a significant investment in the RCMP to ensure they now have the capacity to do that important work, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the member's newfound interest in this, but their record speaks for itself.
The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Madam Speaker, Loblaws, Metro and Walmart are increasing fees to suppliers for the privilege of selling to their grocery stores. On Wednesday, the CEO of Sobeys announced that his grocery chain would not increase fees to farmers and processors. He said, and I quote, "I don't think it's healthy. Some of these behaviours are just plain bad for Canada." When will this government step up like Conservatives are, call this out, and side with Canadians like Sobeys is?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, it's disappointing to see grocers impose these costly fees which fall on the thousands of Canadian food processors who are working hard to feed Canadians and support their communities amid many challenges. Independent grocers, food producers and processors, and their workers have played a critical role during this pandemic. We share the concern of Canadians about fair market practices, and we're committed to ensuring that Canada has the right conditions for all businesses to thrive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Madam Speaker, gouging fees by grocery giants could put farmers and processors out of business and in the middle of a pandemic, putting Canadian jobs and their food security at risk. The government should tell Canadians that they will take action now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. The government needs to call out this unfair competition practice like the Conservatives have. When will they show leadership for our farmers and help everyday Canadians with their grocery bills?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I assure you that we're following the situation very closely with my colleague, the Minister of Innovation, and also with my colleagues from the provinces. This is a very important issue that would fall under the jurisdiction of the provinces, and this is why we will facilitate the discussion, why we will be meeting many times in November through our FPT, not annual anymore, but almost weekly meetings. Thank you.
Honorable député de Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Madam Speaker, yesterday at the Public Accounts Committee, the Auditor General repeated that she doesn't have enough resources to scrutinize new pandemic spending. That's troubling. She stated repeatedly that she won't be able to analyze $343 billion in new spending without additional resources. This makes no sense. And yet somehow, this seems to work well for the Liberal Party. It's happy to let the government spend billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, without being scrutinized, especially if that means that the wee Scarity affair won't be looked at. The Auditor General is asking for a reasonable amount, $31 million. When will she finally get the resources she needs to do her work? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I'd like to start by saying that the President of the Treasury Board and myself are ready to support the Auditor General. Her work is very important. As the Auditor General said when she appeared before the committee, she is very pleased with the work and the collaboration between her office and the Department of Finance.
These people are crazy. This is going to be a disaster.
Instead, Liberals have us talking about this. These are the covered-up wee scandal documents. Documents that parliamentarians asked for on July the 7th. I put forward a motion to unseal all this black ink and reveal the information publicly. A motion that could have been passed in just a few minutes so Finance Committee could get back to its vital work of rescuing Canadians' lives and livelihoods during the pandemic. But instead of letting us vote on that motion and get back to work, Liberals on the committee have spent 25 hours over 4 weeks of debate, speaking 171,000 words into the record to run the clock. They've spoken about such different things as unrelated to the crisis as cartoon characters, Greek philosophers. They have expounded on their personal views about the Jewish Torah, the Islamic Quran, the Christian Bible, any number of subjects, whatever it takes to run the clock and cover up the debate, to prevent a vote so the truth doesn't come out. The secrets contained in this document must be bloody terrifying for Justin Trudeau. You can only imagine him waking up in the middle of night to a cold sweat, thinking about what will happen to his reputation and his government if the truth comes out. Maybe there'll even be criminal charges if the police are able to find out what's in these documents. That's why Conservatives continue to push for the truth to come out. Let's get